Everyone. Good day. We have Miss Kersey Chanel Espejo here with us today. And she comes to us from the financial sector with over 20 years of experience mentoring and coaching people on how to better themselves on a personal and professional level. Recently, she began her nonprofit organization, Kind Wholeness, that offers wellness education to schools and classrooms, as well as corporations and offices. Kind Wholeness also takes part in various events within the local community here in South Florida, one of which is where we met recently. So I don't know if you want to tell the people a little bit about how we met, what event was your organization at, and what were you guys doing there?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for having me, Ms. Sherelle. Very excited to be with you here. We met at the Diaper Bank fair. It was a community event. It was at the YMCA in Fort Lauderdale. And we were just promoting Kind Wholeness, which we focus on wellness education to the masses. And I met you and I thought, you're fantastic and you share about your parenting and what you're doing. And that's how we connected. So
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we did connect, and which led to this moment that brought us here today. So I just want to touch a little bit more on Kind Wholeness. Through your nonprofit organization, you offer coaching and workshops to the community that teach life skills through a mindful wellness approach. Life skills such as intentional time management, boundary setting, and conflict resolution. Is that correct? Do I have that right?
yes, there's so much more because we focus on a holistic approach to wellness, right? The mind,
Mhm.
the physical, the heart and our emotions. So all of it is part of wellness. It's not just one thing. But yes, you're spot on. Within that holistic approach, we tackle many topics.
Okay, yeah, feel free. Elaborate more on the different services that your organization offers to the community.
Yes, right now I'm very passionate about providing the one on emotional intelligence, particularly
Hmm.
in our schools, because yes, academics, the arts, it's all fantastic, but it's important to teach our children how to just react to different emotions, especially in today's world in which we are so addicted to the screen. Having that
Hmm.
tool, right? Giving the children, our caregivers, our teachers, the opportunity to learn specific tools on how to navigate through emotions is one of the programs that we're so excited to bring to the masses. So it's called Emotional Intelligence for our children, the parents, caregivers, and the school staff. So we're very excited about that one. One that we bring to
I'm
corporate
very happy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
one that we bring to the corporations and small businesses is different topics on work-life balance,
Hmm.
mindfulness, self-care. The list goes on and on. But the idea is to bring wellness to everyone because you know the state of the country and the world as it is. That's why this mission is so important and impactful to today's generation and what's happening.
Very, very much so. I just want to break it down a little bit further for those of us out there who may have heard these terms before but are not very familiar with what they actually are. So, mindfulness, emotional learning, or emotional intelligence, as you said, these are modern terms of the times. Can you break it down a bit? What is mindfulness and what is emotional intelligence?
Oh,
Just simply.
that's a lot. So to put it in perspective, mindfulness is not one thing. And I'm
Mhm.
constantly learning, right? I have so many great mentors and leaders and teachers. But for me in particularly, it's really being in the present moment. Surrender to the as is of every circumstance, every situation. And how do you do that? Because it's so hard, right? It's so hard just to be
Yeah.
mindful when you're upset, angry, disappointed. It's very difficult.
Hmm.
So one of the things that I practice and I teach is really pausing, believe it or not. Because when you pause,
Hmm.
you are better to become attuned to what is happening in front of you, whether it's a car
Hmm.
accident, an argument, you got a bad grade, you have to break up a fight, whatever the situation is, you have to pause. You have to pause
Mhm.
and come to the present moment to better realize
Mhm.
what is the next best course of action. Because
Mhm.
being angry is not going to help the situation.
Mhm.
Judging is not going to help. Trying to fix
Mhm.
also may not be the right course of action. So mindfulness, it's really being present and
Mhm.
accepting the as is of whatever the situation is, surrendering to what's
Mhm.
happening in front of you to better receive the guidance from God, from yourself, from whatever it is that you
Mhm.
need to show up to that present moment. So that's mindfulness in a little bit, but
Mhm.
there's so much to it, right? Emotional
Okay. I
intelligence,
just want to,
yeah, to
before
answer,
we move to emotional intelligence,
okay?
I want to ask a little follow up on what you just said with mindfulness. So I know you mentioned like pausing instead of reacting, right? When something happens, you get a bad grade or there's a car accident, right? So in those type of scenarios, it's good to practice mindfulness, right? But what about, is it also good to practice in maybe more, I guess, seemingly still moments where you're probably anticipating or waiting for something to happen and it seems like nothing is happening, but are
Yes.
those moments where you can still be practice mindfulness, or is it more so when there's a lot of commotion going on?
No, no, it's a constant lifestyle, right? It's a way of
Okay.
being. So, one of the things that I practice on a personal level is I just sit. I just sit
Mm-hmm.
before I tackle the day, whatever that may be, right? I take my little mug, right? Whether it's tea, coffee, whatever that is, and I just sit in my little courtyard and I just welcome, right? And I pray, I read my Bible with myself or with my kids. And I really just ask, whatever that may be, right? So that's one
Mm-hmm.
way that I practice mindfulness in my day to day before tackling, right? So that I can
Yeah.
have a better coping mechanism when things don't go my way throughout.
Yeah. So when you practice in the more calm or still moments, it actually helps prepare you for those more heightened moments. Makes
Yes,
a lot of
it's
sense.
building that resilience, right? It's building that resilience.
Yes. Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing that with us. Again, these are terms of the times. So we just want to break it down. That was a really great explanation of mindfulness. So you were going to break down emotional intelligence for us.
The basic way to explain that is having the intelligence or the awareness of how to react, same thing,
Hmm.
when things
Hmm.
don't go your way. So when I meet
Hmm.
with children, right, and they share when I lose a game, whether it's in the soccer field or playing video
Hmm.
games, I want to throw the chair at the TV,
Hmm.
or I just want to punch someone, right? So
Hmm.
being aware of that emotion, right? Of that emotion. So it's okay to be upset, angry, sad,
Hmm.
but let's provide our children the
Hmm.
tools so that when they're upset, angry, which is that emotional intelligence, how to
Hmm.
react. So
Hmm.
losing is part of the game, right? Teaching
Yeah.
that learning is part of the progress. Learning
Hmm.
is part of winning, right?
Hmm.
So if you may not lose that soccer, you may not win that soccer game or that softball game, or maybe in that video game, you maybe didn't get to the finish line, but
Hmm.
the journey, how you got there, you're
Yeah.
learning, is teaching you something. So that is part of
Yeah.
emotional intelligence in basic terms. The way we react
Yeah.
to our emotions, the intelligence to be aware of the emotion and how to handle them.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
the emotional intelligence that we want to equip our children
Hmm.
for the next generation and the
Hmm.
teachers and
Yeah.
the parents that are with them.
Hmm. Now, I would say that the prerequisite to that, right, to getting to this place of being emotionally intelligent is to identify the emotions, right? And as you were talking, talking and explaining what emotional intelligence is, see, I have young toddlers. They're new to the toddler world. They're 17 months today, actually. And so occasionally, and I know we talked about this, and we can elaborate more on that later as far as technology. But occasionally, they'll watch these new videos, right, that are geared towards young children and learning, right? And I've noticed something that we didn't have in our cartoons or videos growing up, that today they are teaching children about this emotional learning, I think is what they call it, or I may have it wrong. But I think it's the prerequisite to emotional intelligence, where they're just pretty much teaching them how to identify the emotions. Like, this is happy. If you feel this way, that's happy. If you feel this way, it's sad. If you feel that way, it's nervous. Or, so I thought that was pretty cool, because we didn't really have the emotional learning, I'll say, growing up. And maybe that is required, maybe first, to learn what these emotions are, identify what this is. This is happy. I feel happy. I feel sad. I feel angry. I feel nervous. I feel scared. I feel hungry. If that's an emotion, I don't know. And then maybe a little bit later, as they get older, and you would know more, because my kids are a little bit younger, they get to the point of what you're talking about, of emotional intelligence, of understanding how they came to be angry, but first knowing what anger is.
Yes.
I
Yes.
don't know. I just wanted to. I know. That's a new trend that I'm noticing in the children's young toddler videos today. They're teaching
Yes.
that.
I'm very protective when it comes to just what's out there. And you mentioned the video. I'm
Hmm.
happy to hear that there's something like that. But I will call out that whatever your kids are watching, that you are present and that you know, because
Hmm.
some of these videos may have a different agenda. So definitely
Mm.
let's make sure that we're watching what they're watching as well, and kind of you
Hmm.
certify it, right? Is this what I really want
Hmm.
my child to be watching, right? Does this align
Yes.
with my values, right? Whatever that may be.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
just a little hint there.
Yeah, certainly. Yes, I'm aware of everything that they watch and put on the screen, and I research the people, the face behind it as well. I just noticed that emotional learning has come into the conversation. It's not just ABCs and one, two, threes anymore. They're also, and these are educated individuals who have their background in education and teaching and all of that. So it's a part of the curriculum today
I
to
love it.
teach emotions.
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. And then that develops into emotional intelligence. So.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of children, I kind of touched on it a little bit. I did not mention in your intro initially, but you are also a wife and a mother of two young children yourself, ages 9 and 12, if I'm correct.
Yes. Actually, my daughter just turned 13, so I have a teenager.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
happy birthday. You have a teen, teen mom club. Yay. We made it, because I understand. I'm still at one, okay? So that is an accomplishment. It's both of your birthdays.
Yes, it is. Very happy. So
So, oh, I skipped over. All right. So, being a mom yourself and working with children, how do you teach the concepts? And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit already. How do you teach the concepts of mindfulness and emotional intelligence to children, and why is it important?
it's critical. I've been fortunate enough to meet Dr. Shafali Sabari. So she is the
Mm-hmm.
conscious parent author. I actually have, just put a little plug here, of the Conscious Parent book. And prior to having my first child, which to me, she's like my master's, and my second child is like my doctor's degree when it comes to this mindfulness, which, by the way, children are forever in the present moment, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
there's one way that you want to attune and really understand what it means to be in the present moment, be in the
Mm-hmm.
presence of a child, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that part of this journey, because it is a journey, when my first child was in my tummy, that's when I made a conscious decision to want to do things
Mm-hmm.
different. That's how important.
Mm-hmm.
She is like my awakener, if you will, right? And that's when I started to tell, my husband at the time, right? Um, I wish for us to do things differently. So I started doing research. So I became
Mhm.
hungry for this knowledge, for this information. So I was doing research on my own. And
Mhm.
it wasn't until she was 3 and I was pregnant with my second child that I saw and met Dr. Shafali in one of Oprah's, shows. So when she started talking
Mhm.
about the conscious way, the conscious parent, that's when I was like,
Mhm.
I'm not crazy. This thing exists. This
Mhm.
is a movement. This is a
Mhm.
thing. So I became to research
Mhm.
more, attended her workshops, her classes, certifications, whatever you want to call it. But again, it's a lifestyle.
Mhm.
So when you say how important
Mhm.
this is, for me, having a child, for me, it was how do I bring another human being into this world? So that
Mhm.
was
Yes.
my sense of responsibility to humanity. How do I bring this human being and do things differently versus repeating the same generational mistakes and having a template, a parental template that may not be aligned with what we're trying to do
Mhm.
in the present moment. So that took for me to do
Mhm.
a lot of work on myself, which is part of what Dr. Shafali talks about. When you think you're raising a child, it's really the child raising you. So that's when I say my
Mhm.
child is my master's. I learned so
Mhm.
much and I continue to learn from my 13-year-old. So why is this so
Mhm.
important? It's a way of being. It's a way of being. So how do I bring this to my two children? By me being a role model.
Mhm.
I cannot tell my
Mhm.
child to get off the cell phone when I myself am on the phone constantly, right? As an
Mhm.
example. So one of the things that we teach here with Kind Wholeness and my parenting coaching is really the setting healthy boundaries, the being in the present moment, all of that. Because if you want your children to be a certain way, we ourselves need to check ourselves. We need to
Mhm.
act and behave differently so that our
Mhm.
children can imitate our behaviors, right? I hope I answered that question, but that's how I
Yeah.
my
Mhm.
me being a role model.
Mhm. Yeah, and that leads into our topic of today, which is parenting. So as it relates, I'll start off by asking about it as it relates to kind wholeness, as we're kind of coming off the end of kind wholeness and the different services that you offer to the community. So I know you work with children in classrooms, but you also have parent focused workshops. So can you tell me a little bit more about the parent focus workshop? And you kind of already mentioned it a bit of the importance of also teaching about emotional intelligence, not just to the children, but to their parents and their caregivers as well.
100%. One of the things that when we sit down with directors or principals of any school, in order
Mm-hmm.
for this to work or to create an impact, we have to work as a collective. And that means a community approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
From the caregivers, from the teachers, from faculty, and of course
Mm-hmm.
the parents, as I mentioned, we all have to be on the same page. So that
Mm-hmm.
is why when we present something to the schools, we have to incorporate the parents. So that
Yeah.
depends what the school wants us to present, right? Is it
Yeah.
emotional intelligence? Is it setting healthy boundaries to help with the whole
Mm-hmm.
screen addiction, to name a few?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just, so you guys let them know it's not just for the little ones, it's for you as well. So
Because
that's
it's easy to
wonderful.
blame. It's easy to blame the child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Mm-hmm.
traditional parenting, that is the focus. My
Yeah.
child is not listening. My child is
Yeah.
disrespectful. But when you
Mm-hmm.
deconstruct that, right?
Yeah. But who's raising that child?
We focus
Who's
on not
raising?
judging, right, or pointing fingers, but it's about how did we
Yeah.
co-create? Why is my child behaving this way? So let's
Mm-hmm.
find a little
Yeah.
bit and help
Yeah.
that parent, that caregiver, that teacher understand what is happening in the mind of that young child, right? So
Yeah.
that we can better help. So we come
Yeah.
from a community approach, a
Mhm.
helpful approach, without
Yeah.
judging, without pointing fingers. We just want to help.
Yeah, that's really good because, like you said, a lot of times we're looking at the child, right? Whether it's in the classroom environment or I don't know, any other type of social development environment on the playground, wherever, we're pointing the finger at the child. But this child comes with an adult or their big person, whatever from the perspective.
Yeah.
So
And the
it's good.
environment is a part.
Yeah.
What is the
Yes,
environment
exactly.
at
Different
home?
factors.
What
Yeah.
is the environment in the classroom, etc.? So we all have
Mhm.
to take ownership of what's
Yes.
happening.
Yes, taking ownership. I love it. So that really goes into something that you mentioned also about parenting differently today. Wanting to take more ownership, being more mindful and aware of our parenting styles and techniques, and leaving behind the traditional parenting that we ourselves may have experienced growing up and coming more into this conscious parenting. So give us a little, before we dive into that, give us a little background on how you grew up and the style of parenting that you received as a child.
I was blessed and fortunate to have wonderful grandparents. I was raised by my grandparents in the Caribbean, and it was very religious, very structured.
Mm,
Um, but I took so many great lessons, which is how is what built me is who I am. Yes, I have a couple of degrees, all this background in coaching and developing people, etc. But really, my foundation is how I got to be who I am today and why I'm so mindful, if you will, right? Because believe
mm,
it or not, a lot of the little things that I practice today, I saw with my grandparents, my godparents, my
mm,
uncles and
mm.
aunts,
So
etc.
they were conscious parents
Yes, yes.
in a
And one of the
way.
things that my grandmother did so well, she protected my spirit, believe it or not.
Mm,
She
yeah.
protected my spirit, which is what I try to do with my 13-year-old now, with my 9-year-old now. I continue to be their cheerleader, their
Mm,
advocate, because like I tell their dad, if it's not us, then who? Look,
yeah.
look at the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's be
Mm-hmm.
better advocate for our children,
Yes.
show up for them
Yes.
on an emotional
Yes.
level and on a
Mm-hmm.
physical level as well. So there's so much more to it, but I was fortunate to come from a very strong God believing family background.
Mm-hmm.
That is my background.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then you just explain how that shaped you. And that's wonderful that you had that, experience. You said that your grandmother protected your spirit. And then you mentioned as well, like even now, the importance of protecting your children even now, in their truest selves. When you were speaking, I thought about the unique role of a mother, right? Even before our child is born, we have to make decisions for them, that are in their best interest, even with the whole birthing, process. Every decision that you make is really to protect their spirit, So as you were talking, I was thinking of how now outside the womb that continues, in a sense.
100%. Traditional parenting comes in. I'll give you this example. When my daughter was 3, almost 4, I decided to put her in ballet. Um, and she went through the process, but at some point she says, Mom, I don't like ballet. And I had to put my ego aside, my personal issues, because I thought exposing her to ballet, piano, etc., is what a good parent, you know, does, right? But again, that was part of my parental agenda. That was my agenda because
Mm-hmm.
me coming from a very poor um, family, not being exposed to piano ballet, I thought, well, let me just provide my kids whatever I didn't have. Meanwhile, she was not interested in that.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to honor her wish, even as a almost 4-year old, and accept that she is one person and I am another person. So the traditional approach may be, no, you have to do this because I'm telling you to do this. because that's the
Mhm.
traditional approach. It's not about honoring that other human being, especially
Mhm.
in the Caribbean, where I come from, is children are meant to be seen and not heard.
Mhm.
So I had to undo that parental template, right? And
Mhm.
I continue to do it, right? And really come into the present moment, realize how is this ask affecting my child's well-being?
Mhm.
Is this about me or is this about my child's well-being? So when
Yeah.
it comes to mindfulness, it's the constant practice. Is this about
Mhm.
me? Is this my ego? Is
Mhm.
this my agenda? Am I really doing this for me or my child? That's when the parenting comes in. It's a constant struggle because culture is against it, right? Culture tells us your child should have a phone. Your child should be doing sleepovers. Your child should do this and that. So you really have
Mhm.
to fight culture, maybe family, maybe friends, and really come to terms with what is it that my child need in this present moment. So I hope
Mhm.
that helps.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So this is more of the conscious parenting method, as I know you model your parenting approach from the renowned New York Times bestselling author, Dr. Shafali Sabari.
Thanks, Kurt.
So thank you for elaborating on that and what that is and what it means to be have the mindful parenting approach. So she's quoted as saying that parents must raise themselves into their authentic selves before they can raise their children to be their authentic selves. So my question is, what do you say to the parent that is still raising their own self and is now faced with the task of also raising another human being?
What I tell myself is give yourself grace. Be
Mm,
patient. Be patient because this is a constant journey, right? A lot
mhm,
of work. I continue to work on myself every single moment, right? I'm
mhm,
not here to teach anyone how to be, how to parent. You have
mhm.
to want to do the work. And
Yeah.
it takes determination, commitment. So it's a
Mhm,
constant commitment to yourself so that
mhm,
you can be the better version of yourself and then show up to your child, to your
mhm.
friends, to your family, to your coworkers. So I would say be patient.
Yeah. Yeah. And then as you give yourself grace, you are able to give your child more grace as well. So that's
100%.
beautiful.
Yeah.
And then I know she also mentions how the traditional approach to parenting also often, I'm sorry, leaves us accepting the crumbs of love and worth and validation as we get older. So for those who want to practice the conscious parenting approach and parent differently, um, what are some ways that they can ground their child in love and self-worth?
It's a lot. That's a loaded question. So I would say once again,
Yeah.
starts with us. And one of the things that we practice or promote at Kind Wholeness is really self-care. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not taking care of yourself, right,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot take care of the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts with us.
Mm-hmm.
We want to start this parenting approach, this mindfulness, baby
Mm-hmm.
steps, right? One of the things that I've been doing since my kids were babies, I
Mhm,
practice date nights. Now they're older, so they tell me, don't call it date night, call it hanging out. We're going to hang out.
mhm,
Even though I have two, and what I tell my parents
mhm,
is if you have three, four, five, you want to spend
mhm,
quality time with each individual child. And that's
mhm,
generate a sense of love, self-care. Oh,
mhm,
mom is
mhm.
taking time for me, right?
Yeah.
Kindness without distractions, without an
Mhm,
agenda. What depending
mhm.
on the age group. And as I see
Yeah.
my children growing,
Mhm.
their ask is differently. So being
Yeah, from when they were
mindful.
infants and toddlers to maybe adolescents and teens, how you do that is going to change.
Correct. So from saying
Mhm,
date night, now it's hanging out. But
mhm. Even the term.
the intention is the same. So for
Yeah.
me, it's okay, I'm gonna hang out with my teenager now. So it's
Mhm,
about what would you like to do today? This is our
mhm,
so she will say,
mhm,
well, I just want to go to the mall. Excellent.
Mhm.
I'm going to follow
Mhm.
her lead because this is her
Yeah.
moment. You know, and a lot
Yeah.
of people,
Allowing her to make choices and have an opinion
yes,
about what she likes.
yes. Well, that's part of it, right? But the whole idea is to not have an agenda, you know,
Mhm.
taking time aside just to be with that individual child. And
Mhm.
again, we have work, we have issues, we have so much going on. So I practice that time management and being intentional. So I put it in my calendar.
Mhm.
This day, I'm going to hang out with my teenager. This
Mhm.
day, I'm going to hang out with my 9-year-old. And that's
Yeah.
non-negotiable for me. So
Mhm.
if I get other invites, I'm going to decline it because that is my priority. Do you understand?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that's part of practicing and role modeling this mindfulness thing, this
Mhm.
way of parenting, baby steps. Try things differently and question it. Question it.
Mhm.
Okay, my parents used to beat me up. That didn't work. I got
Mhm.
I got beat up by my aunties, right?
Mhm.
So that didn't work. I remember I
Mhm.
tried that and it did not work. Punishing. Oh, you need a timeout. In reality, the adult needs the timeout because once again,
Yeah.
if we're not regulating our emotions, all we doing is creating chaos after chaos, right? Repeating
Mhm.
the things that did not work. And my daughter would tell me, that doesn't work, mom. Thank you for letting me know that. So now
Yeah.
it's what should be the consequence now that she's a teenager? Hey, let's talk about it. You
Yeah.
the boundary, what should be the consequence? And then I
Mhm.
set it. And then you'll be surprised to learn that she comes up with amazing consequences, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you
They
know,
know a lot more than you may realize. Yeah.
100. But you see, we're practicing that co-creating, right? We're creating
Mhm.
our boundaries. We're creating our next commitment,
Mhm.
our next set of rules, whatever you want to call it. But the
Mhm.
child is part of it. The child is
Yeah.
part of it. Versus the traditional approach is go to your room, time out, right? I'm taking
Mhm.
away your tablet. I'm taking
Mhm.
away versus let's have a dialogue on the
Yeah.
behavior that didn't work and how can we
Yeah.
co-create a new boundary together? Little things.
Yes. Yes. That's awesome. So I want to touch on this a little bit before we get more into the boundary setting and development. So as parents who are more familiar with the traditional way of parenting, or they may not even realize that, that's what they're doing. They don't have a name or a term for it. They may just be repeating behaviors or honestly just trying to do what's best for their kids, which is always the main number one thing you may hear a parent say is, I want what's best for my child. So the different ways in which they go about that, it's all that same goal. So with that, parents can often create an interlocking cause and effect chain of events in their head that can usually lead to doom, destruction, or catastrophe.
Yeah.
So this term is known as catastrophizing, and it's defined as when a person fixates on the worst possible outcome and treats it as if it is likely. But again, in regards to parenting, this is in the spirit of protecting your child or wanting what's best for them or feeling like you've been here so you have a little bit more wisdom. Even an example, I have toddlers, so I'm always going to use the toddler example. They want to get into everything, and you have to set certain boundaries because what can happen if they get too close to the fire, or whatever it is, or the staircase, or whatever it is. So do you agree? And Dr. Shafali, she talks about this as well. How traditional parenting, parents tend to catastrophize scenarios and events. That if I can't let my child do this because if they do this, then this is going to happen next, and that's going to happen next, and then they'll never get a job and they'll be on the street, all because they didn't want to eat their green beans. So, so do you agree with her that this is something that parents should not do? Or could you kind of understand the reasoning of why some parents do it, feeling that it's necessary for their safety and protections? Which
Yes.
side of it do you kind of align with?
100%. So definitely I agree with Dr. Shafali.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times we do it because it's our parental template, right? We grew up
Mm-hmm.
hearing, don't do this, don't do that.
Mhm.
automatically. It's embedded in us, right? So
Mhm.
when I mentioned I had to unprogram myself from the traditional, that's part of it.
Mhm.
And one of the things
Yeah.
I shared with my husband at the time when I was pregnant, it was, you know what? We're not going to say no unless the child is in danger. Because the
Mhm.
first thing you hear as a
Mhm.
traditional parent is no, 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 no. So you are
Yeah.
just instilling in that child's mind that everything is wrong versus
Mhm.
play with the dirt, jump.
Yeah.
If you
Mhm.
scratch, that's okay. That's part of
Mhm.
playing around. That
Mhm.
resilience, you're gonna build that when you fall, you're
Mhm.
gonna get up. So
Mhm.
one of the ways to help us into less being so traumatic in our
Mhm.
way of parenting, it's really by being in the present moment. It's the
Mhm.
mindfulness approach to your.
Mhm.
If you don't eat the green beans, now you're not going to be, I don't know, an athlete, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So when you think of being an athlete and your
Mhm.
child is only 2, that
Two.
that means you're not in the present moment.
Yeah.
So a
Mhm.
lot of our way of thinking is either
Mhm.
futuristic, it's
Mhm.
either the past, right?
Mhm.
That's how we
Mhm.
constantly come to sometimes the wrong decision for our child's well-being.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
eating your
Mhm.
green beans have nothing to do with you perhaps being an
Mhm.
athlete because you're only
Yeah.
2. So why don't we
Yeah.
focus
Mhm.
on right now? How can I help you
Mhm.
with the green beans right now in the
Yeah.
present moment? Perhaps I
Yeah.
need to
Mhm.
bring other fruits and vegetables into the plate. Let's
Mhm.
have a
Yeah.
colorful plate. Maybe introduce
Mhm.
another green. Maybe they don't want the
Yeah.
broccoli, but maybe the green peas. Do you understand?
Yes.
Being
Yeah. That's
flexible.
not the only vegetable.
It's being flexible
Yeah.
and attuning to what your
Mhm.
child needs in that present
Yes.
moment. And that's
Yes.
what parenting mindfully
Yeah.
is at its best, being in the present
Mhm.
moment. Remember when I mentioned
Mhm.
my child, I wanted my child to play the piano. It had nothing to do
Mhm.
with my child. It was me
Yeah.
thinking futuristic, but
Mhm.
he never liked the piano, and that's okay. That's
Mhm.
okay. Let's
Mhm.
be in the moment. What does my child
Yeah.
need? And one of the things
Yeah.
that we promote and part of the mindfulness is that reframing. Instead of putting
Mhm.
the picture of the worst thing that can happen, why don't we reframe and think of what's the best that could happen in any
Mhm.
situation? So that
Mhm.
starts with us. But remember, I mentioned we need to raise ourselves. Like Dr. Shah
Yeah.
mentioned, we
Yeah.
have to do the work ourselves so that we
Mhm.
can present the best thing for our child. So that's
Yeah.
how we can overcome those things by being
Yeah.
in the moment.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining how to avoid creating the chronicles and catastrophizing for your children's lives. And just like you said, you avoid it by being present and being in the moment. And like you said, also unlearning, the methods that you may have taken on. So I want to ask, this sounds good, right? In discussion. And as some people would say in theory, right? But it's not
Yeah,
just in theory, it's in practice. This is
yeah.
how, you and many other parents live their lives. But I want to, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge that we don't all grow up in the same, I guess, cultural norms. So how does this differ culturally, such as in households where children who face different societal norms than those of a separate household, for that parent, who well, I have these rules for my kid because when they leave my house, the world they face looks completely different than the world that your child may face. So then they do the catastrophizing and they chronicleize their child's life of how it will look for them, which is based on experience and it's from a good place. But like how do we acknowledge that there are cultural differences as well, that different households face, and how can they also not fall into that trap?
Well, I would say this, mindfulness is not for everyone.
Mhm.
If you just ponder on that, this is not for everyone. And we're not here to force it. We're not here to judge. Or again, we come from a helpful approach. This is
Mhm.
not for everyone. And one of the things that I say to people, okay, you've tried that, it didn't
Mhm.
work.
Mhm.
So it is up to you to make the
Mhm.
shift. You can either choose to continue that traditional parenting that has brought perhaps a lot of disgruntledness,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
A lot of hurt, a lot of
Mhm.
pain within the household. And you
Mhm.
hear in certain cultures how the child doesn't talk to the parents anymore.
Mhm.
Child, that resentfulness. You
Mhm.
hear it over and over. So it's
Mhm.
up to each individual if they want to
Mhm.
do things differently. That's
Yeah.
what I would say.
Mhm.
And if you choose to
Yeah.
do differently, pace yourself, give
Mhm.
yourself grace. This is not for everyone. But
Mhm.
again, if you want to try it, reach out to us. We're here to help.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
again, baby steps, baby steps. It's a
Yeah.
constant journey. It's not about a destination. This is
Mhm.
a constant journey and surrendering. Surrender.
Mhm.
Because I may have a savings account for my child to go to college, but what if
Mhm.
I choose to do it differently? Am I
Mhm.
now going to be resentful of my child? I can only
Mhm.
promote education and provide
Mhm.
the environment so that my child can learn in a safe and welcoming and happy place. But at the
Mhm.
end of the day, we have no control as to what they're going to end up doing. Yours is
Yeah.
too, mine is a teenager. We can
Mhm.
continue to promote and
Mhm.
enhance and provide that environment, but we have
Mhm.
no control as to what's going to happen 10 years from now. So what
Yeah.
we can do in a healthy way is focus on
Mhm.
the present moment and be there
Yeah.
for your child emotionally,
Yeah.
mentally, physically, providing the healthy,
Mhm.
providing a
Mhm.
healthy environment that they can run and play and get hurt
Yeah.
and develop their
Yeah.
own emotional, resiliency.
Yes. Yes.
All we
Mhm.
can do in the present moment.
Mhm.
And I hope
Yeah.
that helps. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me.
Yeah, I think I would just add to that, practicing a new approach, like you said, but also maybe attaching some education and awareness, while they're still in your household for what they may see and what they may face, outside of the home as well, so that they can't say, "You never told me," you know.
Right. And they are listening. Even if
Hmm.
we think they're not, it
Hmm.
does stays. Remember what I mentioned about my upbringing, right?
Hmm.
That is my foundation. And again, I have a couple of degrees, but it's my foundation who has shaped me into the person that I am today and why I'm so passionate about protecting the child's spirit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much. And I thank you for all of the education that you gave us today as well. There were so many other things that we didn't get time to touch on, but I know you brought it up a bit as far as boundary setting and how parents can also set boundaries with themselves. So maybe at another time we can dive deeper into that as well and how that looks different. With parents of adult children as well as parents with young children. um, Also, thank you as well for mentioning about, maybe that's something we can also elaborate on, the stress and burnout of parents. All of this work of taking on a new approach can also seem overwhelming, and just giving yourself grace. So thank you for touching on that as well. And also, most importantly, of just being present with your child and finding those moments to be present. So I'll say one last thing as I wrap up. So in my background of marketing, we talk about mapping out the consumer journey, where we anticipate the steps that lead a customer to a brand, and then the interactions that they have with the brand to determine their overall attitude, perception, or experience with that brand, right? But in parenting, there is no mapping it out. But it seems like that's what we constantly are trying to do
Yes.
with our children, and we call it setting them up for success, right? So in preparation, I literally had this thought, and then guess what I found out?
Oh,
Dr. Shafali Sabari created a book last year called The Parent Map.
yes, yes. And I know
So,
why she did it. I know why she did it because we all need some type of roadmap. But it's really moment to moment. That's one of the biggest
Mhm.
stuff that I learned from Dr. Shafali herself. Moment to moment,
Mhm.
surrendering to the as is. We can map it out. We can have our own
Mhm.
agenda, but once
Mhm.
again, we have to be attuned to each individual child, each moment.
Yes. So as we spend time mapping out their best opportunities to set them up for success, we also should map out the best moments to engage and be present with our children.
I
So
love it.
thank you so much, Miss Kersey, for this has been really fun and insightful and educational. Thank you for speaking with me today. And I'm glad that you mapped out the time to be present together in this moment. And is there anything else that you would like to add? I know we're limited on time, but anything you want to add before we wrap up? How can they get in touch with Kind Wholeness? If they want to get involved or if they're interested in your services, what is the best way for them to reach you?
Kindwholeness.com. That's it. We're here to we're here to help, and this is there's no gimmicks. It's really to help
Mhm.
next generation and to impact the people now. Now is when we need it,
Yes.
collective,
Yes.
as a collective. So thank you
Okay. And
so
you're
much.
also on Instagram as well, I believe. Instagram and Facebook. You can find her there.
What we
Thank you
have to
so
do.
much.
Bye bye.
Bye.